doing this funny world of in person and in the ether, which I still haven't got used to. But anyway, good. Okay, Matt, tell me when we're on. Fantastic, thank you. Well, welcome to our 2023 AGM. We will, if people want, be doing regular sporting updates. So if you do want the football score, the cricket score, or to know who's in that horrible bunker on the 18th, we'll be able to give you an update. So yeah, hopefully you won't miss anything. I'm going to keep my welcoming address pretty short. And a few things I just want to say. Firstly, thank you to all those in the room. We've got a very elite band here today, but it's really good to see you all here. And thank you very much for making the time to get here, because I appreciate that's a commitment on your part, particularly given weather and everything that we're having to put up with. So thank you very much for being here today. Thank you also to everybody who is online. I'm saying everybody because until Matt tells me, I haven't got a clue whether I'm talking to one person or 1,000. So I doubt whether I'm speaking to 1,000. But anyway, Matt, at a point in time, Matt, just let us know how many people have dialed in. That'd be great. So I'm going to, in a minute, run through the AGM agenda, and I'll cover off all that. But just before, just a few small comments. So firstly, a big thank you to the Hub team for your contribution to the last year, because you've worked incredibly hard, and we really appreciate that. But also thank you very much for the organisation of the AGM, because I get the easy bit. I just sit here. You get all the logistics of working it all out. So thank you very much for that. I must point out the product placement, by the way. The Volleyball England shop is now live. So we are taking orders. We can sell you merchandise at the end of this. It'll be like visiting Alton Towers, that you have to exit this way, so you can go through the shop. As I say, I am going to keep my introduction short, because Charlie's got a presentation that we're going to hear in a little while, which is really a review of the last year. And then Kevin is going to talk about the finances and run through that. So I don't want to steal their thunder, because I know that they've got some really good things to say. Really, all I am going to say is that I think it's been a really good year. There's been lots of fantastic things happen, and some really good progress made in lots of areas. So, Charlie, congratulations on your first year in post, and Gwyn, congratulations to you as well, because we've had a pretty seamless transition, and I think that's credit to yourselves for doing that. I'm now going to go on to the nice bit and the sad bit of sort of saying thank you to a few individuals, but also we're sad to see you go sort of message. James, I'm going to start with you. So James, everybody knows what James has contributed to the sport. And he's done that in an unsung way. So James, thank you very much. I think, James, we couldn't nail the actual date when we were having dinner the other day, but I think it's about 8 years of running the competition working group. You've had a pretty torrid time in that with COVID and return to play and all of those things. So yeah, a massive thank you from the board, from Volleyball England, and from the sport, because I think that is much appreciated. Simone, who is chair of Volleyball England Foundation, Simone sent her apologies today. She couldn't be here, but Simone is standing down as chair of the Volleyball England Foundation for really good family reasons and a change in her life situation, which is great. But I just want to, again, on behalf of us all, just thank Simone for her amazing contribution to the sport, and for getting the foundation back up and running, because it was a dormant organisation, and now it's back in situ, and it's doing good things and raising money for the benefit of the sport. So Simone, if you're listening, thank you very much. Then the final person I want to give a big vote of thanks is this young gentleman sitting on the end, Richard. And I had to ask Richard how many years, because I wasn't at all sure, and Richard said 54 years of supporting the sport, and really being tireless in your efforts to make volleyball a great sport and to make volleyball as successful as it is. I've known Richard for many years in many different guises. So I think I first came into contact with Richard when you were at Birmingham City Council, and I was a whippersnapper in a leisure centre in Birmingham, and then evolving my sports sort of experience there. And then when I moved to UK Athletics, Richard was chief executive of UK Sport. And so obviously UK Athletics had a big interface with Richard. Richard, I could go on for ages. Suffice it to say that the sport owes you a massive vote of thanks. Richard, for those who don't know, has just got to the end of his term as BVF chair, and really has sort of grabbed hold of that organisation that lay fairly dormant and has really given it impetus moving forward. So Richard, from a personal perspective and on behalf of everybody, thank you very much. I also just want to make mention to another group, and I'm going to call this the Brains Trust within the sport. So Brian, we had a good conversation at Kettering, and about people who held very official positions within the sport have perhaps moved away from those official positions, but that is an incredible amount of knowledge and experience within the sport. And I found our conversation, Brian, really illuminating, because you were explaining lots of things to me that I hadn't thought of, and I just think over this next year we've got to make sure we capture that Brains Trust and make sure we use that intellect that exists, even if it's not in the officialdom. We make sure we capture that information. So Brian, thank you for bringing it to my attention, and let's make sure we maximise that. Okay, I'm going to do some closing remarks, so I'm going to add a little bit more as we go along. We'll now move into the official part. So we've done the welcome. That's it. Job number one out the way. I am going to just, and I got my order wrong, so Claire is already going to tell me off that I got the order wrong. I need to make some apologies. So we've got apologies from Phil French, Dave Reeve, Jake Sheaf, Andreas Hernandez, and Simon. So those are the people that we've got apologies for. What I will now do is just talk about the agenda and how we're going to conduct things. So we will do a review of the minutes, and you should have all received those in the AGM pack. I'm not going to do matters arising or actions because they're not that sort of minutes, but I will just ask the AGM for their approval of those minutes. Charlie is going to do a piece on the annual report. Kevin is going to do a bit on the finance report. What we're going to do at that point is we'll pause, we'll take any questions, not questions that have already come on the website because they've been answered, but anything specifically that people want as a point of clarity or a point of question within that. I'm going to talk a little bit about quite a unique situation that we find ourselves in this year, and I'll keep that hopefully fairly brief and to the point. Claire will then talk about the voting procedures and will run the votes of the AGM. Quite a quick process today, I think. Within that, obviously, out of those votes, things like the auditors and so on, there's an element of appointments that we need to formalise. At that point, the official business sort of closes, but I want to again take questions that relate to the AGM proceedings. I don't want to particularly go back on things that are in the on the website, because I think we can have that conversation over lunch, and it's difficult if you're sitting on camera trying to sort of follow questions that come from the audience and so on. That's not to say that we won't take questions, because we're here to absolutely make sure that you can ask us things and we will answer. And then right at the end, I'll just make some closing remarks and we will wrap up. I am 99.9% certain that lunch will be ready and the sandwiches will be cut. You'll be more than welcome to stay afterwards. I have to make a pre-apology that I have to shoot off to a family event, so I will be here for a little while, but I won't be hanging around. But I'm the useless one anyway, so you've got the brains. Yeah, good. Okay, I have waffled on a lot. Right, minutes. There we go. I got back on track. Yeah. You see, I've forgotten the order already. So review of the minutes. Is the meeting happy to accept the minutes as written from last year's AGM? Yep. Good. I'm not hearing anything to the contrary, so we will accept those minutes. I must explain, just by the way, albeit that we're online and albeit we've got people watching, they can't actually interact with us. So the interaction will come from the room. It can't come from, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit in my update element. So good. So we've done that. Charlie, over to you.
Thank you, Adam. I guess I really want to start first and foremost and say a big thank you to everybody in the volleyball community for welcoming myself and Gwyn into the sport. This is our first AGM. We've been in post now respectively 9 months, 7 months. And the thank you is for everybody that we've reached out to, everyone we've been able to have a conversation with, your willingness to engage, to have some very honest conversations, but also progressive conversations about how together we can move the sport forward. I'm going to talk through a number of the sections in the annual report, just touch on a few key points, but by no means is it going to be exhaustive in terms of the amount of work that we have and we continue to do at Volleyball England. The term I get used a lot is that we continue to punch above our weight for the size of NGB and the tasks that we do. And that absolutely, continues to be the case. So I wanted to start off with, I guess, the communities of practice. So one of the big tasks that myself, Gwyn, the board engaged in really kind of early on into my role was to look at the game plan strategy to make sure that we were 2 and a bit years in. Was it still relevant? The commitment was to regularly review and regularly update the strategy. And through a process of consultation, we realigned the strategic vision of the game plan strategy to ensure that everyone in the sport feels a sense of belonging. And belonging is a word that pretty much sits across everything that we do in the hub team and our efforts to engage with the volleyball community. And a great example of this is the community of practice initiative that we've initially launched for regions and counties, as an attempt to bring people together, to share ideas, to learn, to progress the sport. There's so much more that we're going to get into in terms of the communities of practice, extending it out to different groups. But three initial meetings with the regions and counties, and an opportunity for people maybe to speak to one another that haven't spoken to one another for some time. So a real positive step forward. Moving on to digital transformation, the work of the hub over the last 12 months is mainly centered on 2 areas of activity when it comes to digital. So the first is around Globacol. So Globacol is a safeguarding and case management system. And the second is around new VolleyZone, powered through our new partners, SportPark. So our new VolleyZone system, as most of you will know, is an integrated membership, competition, referee management and events platform. And the key point I'd like to make here in terms of this digital transformation, and it chimes back to our purpose here in terms of making sure that we're putting our members at the heart of everything that we do, is that both of these systems are not purely for Volleyball England, they are for volleyball in England. So they are both systems that can be cascaded down for our regions and counties at an appropriate point. Moving on to MVL and MVL growth in particular. So the facts and figures speak for themselves. So during the 22-23 season, we saw an 8% growth in the number of senior NBL teams and a 9% in the number of junior NBL teams. And this is a real testament to the hard work of our member clubs to capitalise on the increased participation, the booming participation that we talked about at last year's AGM, albeit with the current limitations in terms of the number of volunteers, the access to court hours in facilities that we still navigate and support through. What most people will be aware, if you attended the Cup finals in April, is that we're investing into uplifting our events, domestic events and international events. And what we saw off the back of that was absolutely increased positivity and satisfaction ratings with those in attendance. Probably should have started with Birmingham 22, but I wanted to put it in the middle just in case I'd lost anybody by this point, just to pick the room, obviously, and the stream back up. But what a fantastic summer of sport, and what a fantastic summer for volleyball and beach volleyball in particular. So the efforts of Daisy and Jess, the Bellows, the incredible achievements that they achieved on the sand, coupled with the effort, the commitment, the tireless work of the volunteers around the event, have really ensured that we had our chance to shine and to provide a springboard for a number of legacy projects that we continue to work on and continue to focus on. And I will just touch on a number of those now. So firstly, and as you can see on the image on the screen, is around facilities. So that is the new free court facility at Moseley Rugby Club, which is going to be officially opened on the 13th of August. Date for your calendars. There is a second facility that is in development at the Alexandra Stadium site. We continue to make progress there. In terms of creating a supporting structure around beach volleyball, we have recently announced the development of our beach volleyball development centres, which will provide not only a captive audience of coaches and workforce that we can develop, but also provide a performance pathway for beach. So hopefully we can bring through more talented players and that we can continue to have this success on a Commonwealth and hopefully an Olympic level as we move forward on the beach. Great news this week as well that the Commonwealth Games in 2026 looks like it's got a chance of continuing to go ahead through the Gold Coast as well, and we look forward to receiving extra and more information on that in the weeks to come. The officiating review, so a significant amount of work was undertaken by my colleagues and powered through the ACE service subgroup. In terms of really getting underneath and obtaining a significant amount of insight and research to look at how can we improve the recruitment, the retention, the development and the quality of our officials. This has led to 10 proposals that are starting to be worked through, and what you will start to see in the coming months is those proposals unfolding and hopefully the positivity around those resulting in meeting those aims. Finally, for me, I wanted to talk a little bit about commercial progression. Very much a work in progress, but this is absolutely a nod to addressing our current reliance on Sport England investment and growing our reinvestable funds that we can use then to power and grow other areas of the sport. So there's a number of partnerships that we've been able to move forward on. First and foremost is our long-term partnership with Macassa, which is an 8-year agreement, which is not just about being a ball sponsor, but Macassa helping us as a growth partner of the sport. The Macassa partnership allows us also to become a retailer, and he's already done his salesman job for me in terms of the shop. The Volley Store was launched a couple of weeks ago. Early signs are very positive in terms of the traction that the shop is getting, the sales. The balls are now starting to come through from Macassa Europe. So if you have ordered, they will be with you shortly. In addition to Macassa, we have partnerships with Universal Services, with Huddle, and with SportServe as well. These are all partnerships that are going to start to have a significant improvement to either our competition. So Huddle, for example, is a data analytics software which is going to be used to enhance the Super League, our talent programs, coaching and officiating development. So we'll start to see a slightly different approach to the Super League this year in terms of how we position it and how we then sell it. Our deal with SportServe is around being an integral partner in the shop, but also being being a branding and events partner, again, to chime back to us uplifting our major events and doing more in that space. So only a few points that I guess I've picked up upon there, but all incredibly positive, in line with the game plan strategy and our success aims over the next 5 years.
Great, thank you, Charlie. Kevin, we'll run both presentations together and then we'll pick up questions after.
Just before I start the finance report, I just wanted to state that our auditors, Duncan and Topless, have actually been in. They've done two weeks of field work, and they've come up with no changes. They've prepared their draft accounts, and this is what this is. These numbers are based on those draft accounts. So next slide, Charlie.
You wanted to say that for a long time, Kev. You have wanted to say that.
Please don't switch off. I'm not going to go through all these numbers because I know numbers on everybody's back, but I'm just going to pick out the most significant ones. So you can see our turnover in the year, £1.5 million worth of turnover. Interestingly, more than 50% of that was our own generated turnover, so it wasn't from Sport England, which is, I think that's the first time that's happened. So that's fantastic. Along the self-stability platform. You can also see a turnover figure one, but compared to the previous year, we're up £400,000. That's because the first quarter of last year was COVID, so this reflects a full year of volleyball, which is great. Our actual profit figure, surplus figure, was we budgeted to make. We don't budget to make a profit. We want to use all the money in the sport. So we budgeted to break even. £622. We actually made £10,000 surplus, so we'll just use that into next year, which is fantastic. That will be used as next year's investment. Next slide, Charlie. What this is, I call this a profit bridge. This, instead of going into all the numbers, this explains the difference between the budgeted profit and where we've ended up. So it shows any significant movements in the numbers. And what this shows is we had a gain on salaries. We didn't recruit a certain position, and then some of our positions we had a gap. If someone left, we'd have a gap of a few months, and that's what generated those salary gains compared to the budget. We also had course margin. We did very well last year on the courses that were put in place, and the margin was a lot better than we got in the budget. So that came through as well. Also, Charlie, the MBL and student income, the numbers in the MBL was fantastic growth last year. So let's hope that continues. And that generated extra revenue. This is above and beyond what was in the budget. And then if you look at the sort of red areas that this allowed us to spend the money on, the digital transformation project, in the budget, we said that we'd release all our provisions against it, and in last year. We haven't. We've spent the money last year and developed it, but we've held on to those provisions for this year as we do more in that project. So that's actually, if you like, we didn't release that in last year, we've got that for this year. So that's, I call that an investment to keep it going for this year. The final one, without getting too technical, we had additional service charges on this place. Electricity bills have gone up last year. We've improved the website, and we had some IT. The one that did catch us out, and I probably won't mention it, is irrecoverable VAT, and it's to do with that. I won't mention it too much because I know most people aren't interested. If anyone does want to know more about it, talk to me after the week. We can discuss that.
I wouldn't recommend it.
So, final slide then, Charlie. This just shows of the money in the year, what sort of, the money that we got from Sport England, the awards that we've got, and what we'd spent in the year. So we'd spent some on the medal prep, we'd spent the system partner money that we get from Sport England. The participation from the Commonwealth Games, we spent sort of 86,000 on that. That's on diversity and sort of legacy after the games. We've also got some money that the BBF have got that we sort of manage, if you like, through sitting volleyball, and we spent 125,000 on that. That was going on fantastic Europe competitions, training camps abroad, and cup competitions, and that's really helping sitting volleyball massively. Just to move then into next year, if you like, within the budget we've got nearly a 6% growth next year based on this year. We've got reserves at the end of the year. Those reserves, the reserve policy is that if the worst did happen and we went bust, we could pay the staff and all of our legal commitments. So that's why we just keep that little bit of money in there, but the rest of it we're using on volleyball. And just to show that, you know, we are in a healthy position, at the end of the year we've got £451,000 in the bank. As at the 28th of June, we've got 392. We've got about 450,000 as of today. And that should sort of give you confidence that it's that would send us the companies go bust on if they've not got the cash. So that was just to highlight we've got cash in the bank. Okay, that's me done, Charlie, I think.
Great.
Thank you.
Kevin, thank you very much. Okay, we'll take questions on anything so far. Yeah, direct them to, well, no, you direct them to whoever you want. No? James?
Yeah, as you know, I always have questions.
Just
to start off by saying, none of my questions should be seen as a criticism of the integrity of those currently involved. I know how incredibly hard everybody is working and appreciate all the work that's being done. I just want to get that clearly on record as I ask the questions. So my first question is around the game plan. So earlier in the year, there was a commitment made to do quarterly updates of the game plan. I had a look on the website. It's not there at the moment for this quarter. So I'm particularly interested in knowing for this quarter, what were the targets and what do we achieve against the targets? So all I'm trying to do is dig in a bit more about what you said to say, what do we promise and what do we deliver and what's the gap and what's the over delivery either?
Gwyn, I might actually bring you in on this just in terms of some of the specifics, but I guess just as an overview, first of all, we had a board meeting last night. As part of that board meeting and the subgroup and the departmental updates, there were a whole string of progression statements that are going to be put on the website. So that for those of you that have been through the game plan part of the website, there is a tab that says quarterly updates. So as an overview, the updates that were given at the board meeting last night, which were approved, will be on the website very shortly in terms of each of the strategic areas, the implementation plan that we've put in place, and the specific progress that we've made against them, of which some of the things that we've talked about, or what I talked about in the exec, update and the annual report, will be included within that as well. Gwyn, I don't know if you want to go any more specific or just any key highlights that are detailed within that.
And so, of course, we had a series of key highlights related to the end of year competitions. So those came through, and then the planning as we go forward into the future of that. We've got around the coaching and workforce, we've got the ongoing implementation of the officials, and with the coaching courses, some of them which have been written and some of them are still in the process of being filmed, etc. in that space. The great news as well with the number of people coming on courses for our workforce weekend in September. So there's a lot of planning around that going forward. What's taking up a considerable amount of everybody's time at the moment, of course, is the transition as we go into the new volley zone, and that is actually putting a lot of pressure on staff time at the moment. But we'll try as hard as possible to make sure that the Q2 targets that we've set ourselves don't get pushed back because of that. But it's really important for us in how the sport operates from bottom to top, that platform is a smooth transition. Thank you.
Just to add a little bit to that, James, you and I had a broken telephone call because of the Herefordshire countryside the other day, but we had a call nonetheless, and we talked about KPIs. And if we look at the game plan in totality, there might be 50 KPIs. It would just be a lot of information to come across. What we've discussed after that call is how do you create a succinct dashboard that's almost like the moving clock. So you're watching, and I think in a process of collaboration, it'd be good to say, what would we want on that dashboard? So, you know, asking the sport, what are the 5 or 6 factors that you actually think are important to report on? So it might be the number of coaches, it might be the number of officials, it might be the number of competition entries. But I think it would be, you know, I really listened to what you said to me the other day, and I think it's a good thing if we can create, because there's wonderful impact going on. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think that for me is the key piece. Is we've got a really good story, but we're not great at communicating it. And if we can get better at communicating it, then that's what builds trust. A part of that journey is about, you know, it's not about, you know, the annual report has to be there. It has to be there for marketing purposes, and people need to be able to see the good things we're doing. We also need to be, though, honest and transparent where we don't meet the targets that we set ourselves. And, you know, we all know that things get in the way. You know, you get the NBC contract suddenly blowing up in your face and you have to drop stuff to make it happen. But the way to build the trust and the rapport with the membership, that sense of belonging, is getting that transparency. At the moment, for me at least, as I look at this stuff, I see not that concrete stuff that says, here's our targets for 2Q, this is what we delivered, this is what we didn't deliver, this is what we over-delivered, and why. And then if we can do that, then I think that gives us the right.
No, I agree. James, the only thing I'm planning, it's not my prerogative to disagree with you. The only thing I would like to think it's much more about rapport than trust, because I would, you know, really hope that what we're doing is trusted and people are trusting what we're doing. But I do agree with you that there is a rapport issue. You know, we can always get better, and we need to do that. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted your questions.
So a similar question about the officials review. So Charlie, we talked about in the coming months. I think what would help people, so that the comments I've had from people around the officials review is interesting. So what and when? When are we going to see the difference? What are our targets? When are we going to, we've got a target at the moment, we're appointing about 70% of officials to NBL matches. So do we have a target where we're going to get that to 80%, 90%, 100%? And if we have, when are we going to communicate that and how does it all come together? Because ultimately, that's, you know, the activities are interesting, it's the outcomes that people really want to see down. So have we got any dates that you can communicate at this point? Any targets that we have?
I'm going to look over my right shoulder to Simon and just ask him to jump in on that one.
Not yet, no. I mean, the proposals have been worked through. There's, you know, there's a team for each of those 10 proposals. It is the next stage. It is something that they need to do. So yeah, so I can't give anything more concrete, but you're right. They do need to have something a bit more firm put against them. I think a lot of time and effort is being put into the one proposal in particular. That's probably what's distracting attention. Not that that's an excuse, Ben.
Do you want to outline what's the one thing that they're really pushing on at the moment?
Oh, no, the one biggest one is that fourth proposal, isn't it? It's the one about, it's essentially the pathway. It's about having appropriate products for different target audiences. We're trying to bring referees in. I mean, we know there's a big issue that you have. Most of the people who do a grade 4 are doing it for particular reasons, which do not lead them into wanting to referee an NBL game. So, but we're still selling the same product to multiple audiences. So those audiences need to be segmented, and the pathway needs to be rethought. And Charlie talks a lot about people development plans. It all fits into that. It's one great big proposal. So that's the one that most people would probably pay attention to, and that's probably not in a position yet where we can start putting firm targets against it.
Can I pick up on that, because it's particularly pertinent to me in that in the Northwest, for example, we've got 5 senior referees, and we keep adding more and more teams to the NBL. Yes, I've seen the proposal, I've been involved in the proposal to bring clubs into the NBL with referees. By the same token, you're bringing people in who are newly qualified, and we have tried to embrace that because we've run at least 4 courses this year in the Northwest to try and develop referees. So we're trying to do something at grassroots. The question is, given the comment on the time frame, to get people from base level to the ability to referee, as distinct from second referee in an NBL game, is quite a lengthy time frame if it's done.
Yep.
And And we need therefore to be moving faster than we are doing at the moment. Comment on the question, I suppose.
Yeah.
Can I just come in on that? Because I think that's where the regions and counties and areas should have much more of a proactive, we want this to happen.
Yeah.
So I run courses that make this happen, that upgrade people, because I want referees to work in my area that are of a good standard and have that progressive pathway. And I've found that most don't. Most just complain they haven't got referees. Now, you're saying you do courses as well, so we're probably the only two, it seems, virtually in the country that sometimes are doing them. But there does need to be some stuff coming back from the clubs as well, and the associations and the regions. And I think trying to find that number is quite difficult, but I do think it needs, and we've talked about this, it does need reassessing, just to have one exam that just finishes and that's it. And it's pot luck if someone looks at you or likes you as to whether you move up. And let's be honest, that's what happens. Or you're aggressively enough in there to say, come on, I want to referee. It's not really us, both us and the volleyball community, making this work, is it? So that's my feeling.
Yeah, and freedom, just to that point, I mean, that was raised early in the conversation about it, but didn't make it into the final proposals.
Yeah.
There was a suggestion that the officiating group actually worked with the counties and regions and set targets for them to provide things, but that wasn't picked up and taken forward. So,
sorry, picked up by?
no, so the subgroup.
I think some of this as well, what we're sort of merging into is the work, the other bit that Charlie and we're looking at is how we make our working groups and subgroups more effective. So some of this is like, well, what is the role of the officials working group? And the officials working group can take a more proactive stance on developing, properly mentoring, coaching, developing that group of grade fours that come in. It feels at the moment it's like the sole aim is just to get as many people through grade fours. Oh, well, how many courses we laid on? Yeah, but where is the proactive management of those people? 80–90%, I'm guessing here, of whom might never want to get on the stand in an NBL game. That's fine. They're doing it for a particular reason. So let's get a product that's fit for them. And then the 10–20% who are interested or who are already our NBL reps, why are we not more proactively managing their ongoing development? Why couldn't we have a fast track scheme? You're saying about how long it takes to get all there. Why couldn't we have some sort of fast track, where you have a cohort of 10 to 20 every year? So all of these things, that's why proposal 4 about the grade 4 became a big deal, but also so it morphs into this idea of what is the officials working group there to do, because that is a vacuum that probably needs to be filled.
Okay, Brian.
We could go on for this for a long time.
James, just 2 seconds. I'll take Brian's and then I'll come back to you, James. And then I am going to try and, I'll take one more and then I'm going to try and sum that bit up.
In terms of official development, that structure that you're describing and trying to get the subgroup to work towards did exist. And over the years, there has been a dilution of that, mainly through a lack of budget finance into that area. And I'm going back 10–20 years ago now. So that structure did exist. So there is a basis for doing that. The officials group just need to get on and reenact a lot of what they used to do before.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not something it's not new.
Yeah. James, I'm going to take your question and then I'll try and.
I have 2 questions. Can I squeeze 2?
Yeah. Are they relating to that last point, or can I just?
No, this is about.
I'm going to, if I just sum up on what I'm hearing
On the officials.
on the officials piece. I think, James, the point you make about telling the story is we're hearing it loud and clear. So absolutely be reassured. We've got Matt new in position in terms of comms. We need to tell the story. We need to make sure we're transparent in telling that story with the good and the bad. So point absolutely understood. I think utilising the team and Charlie, has really pushed me hard in terms of the thinking about regions and counties, and Frida, you're always, telling me that we've got a big team of people, and the hub team can't do it alone, and therefore we need to make sure that we're working as a team effectively to get that done. And I think the point you make about priority, this is a priority. We've been referring to it as an officiating crisis. It needs to be sorted. And Brian, again, when I was talking about the Brains Trust, I hate looking back and thinking we have to replicate what we did before. We have to take the learnings of what we did before and what we're doing now and come up with what's the future. And I think, Brian, that's where we need to use the expertise of people who've been in previous regimes and say, right, what was good? What do we carry forward? So all the points you're raising, I think, are really valid, and we need to take them on board. James, your questions about finance. I'm
Yeah,
looking
so-
forward to these, James, by the way.
So first of all, I think that if you go back in history, where the board and the company decided that they would only provide company accounts, was not a good place for us to be. The fact we now get management accounts is a step forward, in addition to the statutory reporting. So I think that's great that we're doing that. So good job, Kevin. I actually would comment that I think that what you put in the annual report is even better than the management accounts, because the management accounts actually, to me, don't mean anything. If it helps you to run the business, great, but I don't think it helps the membership to understand what's going on. When you see massive negatives and massive positives, everybody's going, what do you mean we're making massive losses on this? And it's kind of like, why would you run a business like that? Particularly as you guys have said that each part needs to pay for itself and have to generate some money for future investment.
Yep.
The management accounts don't reflect that and don't help us to kind of understand that story. So I would encourage you to keep thinking about, if that's how if the management report that you put in out on the web is the one that these guys run a board meeting each month or 4 times a year or whatever you need, that's fine. But I'm not sure it really helps us to understand. So that's kind of my key comment about that. I'm not going to ask the questions I asked in the pre-stuff. We'll leave that part of that. One question I did have was around the reserves policy. So I tried to find the reserves policy on the website. I couldn't find it. Kevin, you're clearly all over this. What's the reserves policy?
I did mention it, didn't I?
You mentioned that we had money, but you didn't say what the policy was.
The reserves policy that the board set was to make sure that we got an adequate figure there for if Volleyball England did.
Right, and I have to put my hand up, right? So I did a financial review for you guys a few years ago, and you had a reserves policy, and it said that you would have sufficient funds to run the organisation for 3 months. So that's a very specific thing. Is that still the policy, or has it changed?
No, the policy was to pay any legal commitment that we have to wind the company down. So it was to pay any redundancies that we've got or any service of notice that we've got, and it's to be able to hit all of those commitments.
Right, and you're telling, so I understand, you're saying that £89,638 is the amount that's required to do that?
Yes.
Perfect. That's great. That's what I was just trying to clarify.
Yeah.
Because not having that detail.
No.
One of the questions we had is before we did not have sufficient reserve to do that. So my follow-up question was going to be, what is the timescale to rebuild that reserve to get it to where it needs to be? And the answer is done.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, James, just commenting on a couple of points here. We have absolutely been committed to making sure that every penny we can spend in the sport, we spend in the sport. So we've kept things as tight as we possibly can in terms of reserves, and I wouldn't want to deviate away from that because I think that's a really positive thing. James, because you've been around for a long time, as others will, how difficult the last 7 years, 7 years have been in terms of 7 years ago, we were in a dire place. Thanks to the great work of successive CEOs of the board, Kevin, we're now in a really healthy position with growing funds. So I hear what you're saying about financial transparency and communication of it. I think the message I'd like to give to the AGM is we're in a great place, and we weren't in a great place historically.
Yes, and that's clear for the bank account, right? That's one of the great things of that transparency. You can see that. Just a couple more questions around the finances, if I can. So when you talked about NBL, do you include juniors in that figure? Because I believe that's one of the big growth areas that we've had in terms of income.
Yeah, in my NBL figure, it's the total NBL revenue, so it would include that as well. Yes.
Okay. So again, I think that's something that in terms of transparency, I think if we can let the membership know that yes, some of it's growth from NBL teams, but to understand actually the things that we've done in the junior space, which is we all believe it's absolutely a fantastic thing to do. We ought to be kind of, again, showing that. And, you know, I understand from a finance point of view, you don't want 500 numbers to try and display, you have to group things together. I have to do this too as well, but, you know, there's certain things that we should be celebrating, but we don't always do it.
James, I'm going to take one more, and then I'm going to move on.
Yep, that's fine.
As much as this is enjoyable, we could be here for a long time. So, James, I'm only joking. I'm joking. Fire away.
So the other question I had was around on the sort of the commercial side. So I think, Kevin, last year you reported that we had a 300% growth in commercial income. What was it this year?
This year it's not been as, if you remember last year.
Very low base.
Yeah, it was a low base that we came. So this year it's steady, but hopefully next year we'll put in the budget growth, and Charlie mentioned some of the deals that we've done. So this year it's been level, but next year we're hoping that it's going to grow significantly again.
So again, just as part of that conversation, you can hear, like, I hate these conversations. I hate conversations. It's going to grow. What's the target?
Yeah.
And can we report against it next year?
Okay, James, just on the commercial side, a lot of our contracts, as you will know, will not allow us to disclose the financial information. So we can't quite often disclose the terms. And
just so it's clear, I'm absolutely not asking for that.
Yeah.
And that's why I was asking for the total, because by asking for the total, there's enough commercial deals that it one of them could be 99.9% of it, or they could all be 25%.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be giving away any commercial information. You're going to report on it at the end of the year. What I'm looking for is the transparency that says our target is, because you know it, is X. Publish that now and then report on it next year, so we can say, yeah, fantastic. Otherwise, I have no clue right now whether this year was good or bad. All I know is it's the same as last year. And if that was your target, then that's great, because you made your target. If your target was to lose 25%, that's even better, because you actually managed to make up 25%. If your target was to double it, well, then we have some questions for you as a board as what went wrong in that process. But I can't ask those questions because that information is not available to me.
Yeah.
So that's the one trying to get across.
Yeah, good. I mean, as I do as a day job, James, the targets would be very small, because I'd far prefer to smash them out the park than overestimate. And as you well know, it is a massively competitive market at the moment. Sports sponsorship is not an easy place to be, and NGB sponsorship is even harder.
Absolutely, and we all understand that.
Yep.
Right? And that's part of why we want the transparency, so that we can sit there and say, great job.
Yeah.
Without the transparency, we don't know.
No, James, I get it.
And then the last question is very focused around Volley Store. Have you any specific plans for the store that you can share? So specific things like, so the Macassar balls is only the latest ones that are on there.
Yeah.
Are we going to put some of the older balls which are much, much cheaper and will be really good for the clubs, because they don't need those for most things?
So I'll give you a very simple response, and I'm going to fire the question back. We do have access to the entire Macassar back catalogue. Obviously, we would have to do our checks in terms of the feasibility of bringing in certain products because of margins and post-Brexit additional costs and things like that. But if there are any particular product lines in the Macassar range in particular that the volleyball community wants, we're all ears. We're absolutely all ears. We have just expanded, so we've added a few additional lines, knee pads, valves, cards. Yeah, cards. Yeah, we're constantly going to be working on the shop. I guess it comes back to your previous question, James, as well, about targets. We've been very modest in terms of projecting the shop's growth, because quite frankly, it's a voyage into the unknown. So we hope it's going to be hugely successful, and that we're going to grow this, what I talked about earlier, in terms of the funds that we can then reinvest into, and officials and workforce was mentioned earlier in terms of needing some attention. This is exactly what we're trying to do. But hopefully, as we get into quarter 2 and quarter 3, we can be a bit more overt with how we're getting on.
Would it be an idea for us to have a small group of people that can give you that information? I mean, I'm thinking that, so for my club, I wouldn't have anything but a 200, all of our practice, everything is, you know, but now they're £75 each, aren't they? You know? So, but that's what we have. Because I believe if you have a substandard or a lower ball and someone gets injured, that's my problem as a coach and I could get into trouble for this. So, but there are a lot of people out there, especially schools, I would say, who do need a much cheaper product so that they can introduce volleyball to the school. But it's the people working in the school that know the product. I wouldn't know, and I don't know if anybody else here really would. So it is probably finding some specialist people, which we've got, haven't we?
Yeah, so we have existing partnerships and relationships with bishops, for example, that supply to schools.
Yeah.
So I guess we'd have to have conversations and just make sure we're clear on the product lines, just to make sure that we're not crossing over.
As a former head of PE, I know that bishops in particular and others will sell you the product they've got, but they're not necessarily good for volleyball youngsters. So I think we do need to have some specialists and knowledge.
We're all leaders.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
And not just pass the balls.
Yeah.
All the product lines.
Very last thing is, I think there's a potential opportunity now, which is outdoor posts, nets, lines, etc. My understanding is Sportset has sold the brand and it's about to come up online. If you get in ahead of them and have Volley Store having that kit available, then there's potentially a untapped market. So if it's not on your list of doing next week, then you might want to do it.
So a good action, James, from this is we need to listen to what membership want to buy, because it's in all of our best interest, isn't it? So good. I'm going to move on, Richard.
Yeah, just an observation which may or may not be helpful. But many years ago, and again, I'm not taking us back, we did run Polishop. And the person that was involved in the establishing and the building up of and the whole running of the organisation is David Joy. David went on to become chief executive of British Canoeing.
Yep.
He's now a consultant for UK Sport, and I'm sure any of the principles that he came across might prove to be of some assistance.
Yep.
In the latest,
Great.
the latest project.
Yeah, and I know David well, so can get in touch. Good, thank you, Richard. Okay, I'm going to move us on. Unless have I missed any questions? No? Good. Okay, I'm going to move us on. Oh, blimey, that sounds very formal, doesn't it? Update from the chair. Okay, so we're in a slightly strange AGM this year, in as much as the AGM we're running is slightly different to the AGM that we thought we were going to be running. There are probably three areas I want to cover. So number one is a little bit about the process. So I'll come back to that in a second. Number two is a little bit about the makeup of the board, because I think that's an important comment I want to personally make. And number three is a little bit about the resolutions. And then I'm going to add to that a little bit of self-reflection, because I think there's a lesson to be learned within that. So in terms of the process, I look forward to this time of the year because it's every day is a school day, and I have learned a lot in the last few years about governance and process and all sorts of things. Probably about, I'm thinking in terms of timings, 8 to 10 days ago, we were made aware of some things that were going on within the voting process, or within the sport that potentially could corrupt that voting process. So we went through a process of due diligence. We examined the information that had been communicated to us and sent to us. We looked at that and we felt that it was inappropriate in relation to what had gone on and how it had gone on. Not wanting to make a unilateral decision on behalf of the board, we contacted Sport England. We asked Sport England what they thought. We also contacted an independent legal advisor and asked their view. In relation to the independent legal advisor, they were categorically that the voting system for this year's AGM had been corrupted because of the actions that had been taken. And their strong recommendation to us was that all of the resolutions we were going to consider were taken off the agenda, and that's what we observed that. What we also did is made sure that we consulted with Sport England and said to Sport England, this is our intended course of action. Are you happy for us to take that? I don't want to go into any more details than that particularly today. We will be going through a more formal investigation to really understand it, because I think it's important that democracy wins out as opposed to any sort of corruption of that process. So we will be going into a more official investigation, and we will come back with conclusions in relation to that.
I think Claire was probably just nudging you there to say alleged corruption rather than actually saying.
You see, that's why you always have to have a lawyer next to you. Yeah, alleged corruption. Sufficient, James, I think, based on what we'd seen. Corruption's a very strong word, isn't it? But I think our view was, alleged or not, it was going to prejudice the process. And in fact, it did prejudice the process. You could see it. It was very self-evident how that manifested. So that's all I want to say on that, but we will make sure we update as that process goes on. Because you guys have given your time to be here today. There's people online who have given their time to be here today. Everybody has the right to be able to have a great democratic process where we can hear things and so on. James, I'm just going to pick on the conversations we had about resolutions. I think articles, resolutions, special resolutions, all of these different terminologies are quite confusing, and I've been around it for a long time now. It's confusing. I think it's beholden on us to try and help the sport utilise the democratic process right. That's a lesson I've learned. We will do more to do that. Okay, so that's that point. The secondary point is about the board makeup, and this is a little bit of a bugbear for me, and it frustrates the hell out of me. I consistently get confronted about, you're a board full of independent people who have not got a Scooby-Doo about volleyball and what's going on. With the exception of myself and Dave Reeve from the FA, and I'll come back to Dave in a second, 9 of the 11 people are embedded within the sport. And 9 of those 11 people have got a massively diverse background in terms of volleyball and their understanding of volleyball. So I want to defend the board, because it is a frustrating thing when these guys come to the meetings, they are, actively participating in the meetings, and they hear the criticism that the board has no connection or understanding with the sport, because these people are, we've got Frida, Brendan, etc., etc. There's absolutely masses of volleyball knowledge in the board, and therefore I think that sort of slightly misleads a lot of the things that we're trying to achieve when we talk about independent board members and elected board members. Anyway, that's bugbear off my chest. I needed to say that. What I then want to talk about is just some of the things that I was sad didn't come to the AGM. Whether the board's recommendation and the resolution is successful or not, I think there were some sad things that we've not been able to bring forward to the sport. One of those is about affiliation for our volunteers and bringing volunteers in as affiliates. What a shame that we are not sitting here today, discussing volunteers being affiliates. We talk about the volleyball community, the volleyball family, and yet we're not in a position to be able to discuss that. That, in my mind, is sad. Today is illustrative of the second one I wanted to pick up, which is about a hybrid AGM. We are not having a hybrid AGM today. We're having an in-person AGM with people being able to view that. Within the resolution, there was a desire to bring in a hybrid AGM that would allow people online to be able to comment, ask questions, interact. And we know, I know you guys have, it's a big investment of time and effort to be here. A lot of people can't do that or wouldn't be in a position to do that. I think it was beholden on us to allow them to do that. The third area is about the board makeup and the resolution which talks about the balance of independent and elected. We did that. The proposal was put forward. I'm not going to go into great detail on it, but it was put forward to make sure we've got a board which has loads of volleyball experience and expertise, but also has the skills to do the job of running the organisation. Again, we're not in a position that that's being heard, and I think that is sad. I'm now going to do the self-reflective bit, which is just there are lessons to be learned. And I think the big lesson that I've learned is, if we as a board believe strongly that these things are important, and we do because we wouldn't have put them forward, we need to come out to the sport almost tomorrow and start that conversation and we probably relied on, you know, information coming out later in the day, people making a judgment based on whoever they listen to at a point in time. And I think that's sad, because I think we've missed an opportunity. So rest assured, we'll continue to bring things to the AGM that we think are important to the future of the sport, but we'll do it in a more elongated communication process where we can have a proper dialogue. That's all I'm going to say on that. We're now going to move into...
Can I ask a question?
James, of course you can.
After the last AGM, where essentially very similar resolutions were put forward, we had a conversation that said we wouldn't do it that way again, that we would break up the resolutions, that we would engage people earlier, and we would do all of that. Why didn't that happen this year? Because fundamentally, you know, at least from my perspective, as I look at those resolutions, I agree with what you're saying.
Yep.
In terms of the intent. What my particular problem was, it was just the wording. If you'd have worked with us beforehand, I would have been one of the advocates saying, yes, go for it.
Yeah.
But the wording as it is,
Yeah.
for me, left loopholes and unintended consequences, which gave me concern.
Yeah.
And as such, I wasn't able to feel
Yeah.
that I could support it.
No, James, and you know, that's I can't actually remember saying whether we would break it or not break it up in terms of the resolution. I can't remember that.
There were several other people there.
No, James. If that's what we said, that's what we said. It goes back to this: every day's a school day, isn't it? You know, you sit here. We're all volunteers. We're doing our best to bring forward what we think is relevant and applicable. We did that in the way. I've learned some lessons. Again, we've learned some lessons. So let's do it. You know, yes, really disappointing. You've come here to have a really expansive conversation. It's now a narrow conversation. People online wanted the same. That's a shame. Let's not make the same mistake collectively next year. Let's do it in a positive way.
Let's have these things put through in the proper way beforehand and through democratic ways, rather than bullying tactics and last minute and just suddenly addressing things. It's just, so I just find, as a volleyballer, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of what's happened here and what people have done. And I'm sure they mean good by it, but they've hurt a lot of people, myself included. And a lot of people personally are being attacked. And you have to realise that what you're doing has consequences, personal consequences. And it's been very upsetting.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not aware of anybody being personally attacked, so if that's happening, that's obviously I can't comment on that. I think that what we need to be, so I think it being investigated, I think is very good. I warmly welcome that. My only question is how is that going to be done independently? Because I think, you know, as you pointed out, and there's mistakes on both sides. So I think the entire process needs to be looked at. So from my perspective, I look at some of the things and say, we were asking on the proxy form to give the VE club number. That isn't available on the new Volleyball system. Therefore, that was a barrier to people being able to vote. Now, you found ways around it, and it was all conversations, but you don't know how many people who might have voted weren't and chose not to because there was a barrier. So for me, that is not a democratic process. It's something that, you know, when I saw that article, as I started reading it, I thought, oh, they've spotted this problem and they've made a decision to pull it.
Yeah.
When I read the rest of it, I thought, that's interesting.
James, I'm gonna stop the conversation because we could go on for a very, very long time, and I don't think that's productive for any of us. everybody in the sport needs to, we want a democratic process. We want a process, you know, where we've got 150 people at an AGM, where 250 people are online, where there's a positive interaction. We are switching people off from getting involved. And, you know, if 99% of our sport is not connecting, it's because we're not inspiring them to connect. So let's flip that narrative and let's get it better, because we've got it wrong. Collectively, we've got it wrong. And like Frida, you know, personally, I don't volunteer my time to feel really dejected every, you know, year. I don't look forward. I don't think, oh my God, the AGM's coming round, I'm going to have a joyous time, because it's a bit arduous, and that's rubbish. So let's make sure we don't have that in the future collectively.
And that's fine. So just come back to my question: how's the independent investigation being done, so that we're clear that, you know, all sides are looked at,
Yep.
so that if there are concerns that some of the statements that Volleyball England have said may have been led to misinterpretation or misinformation on both sides, right? Because we want to work together. We want to get this right.
Yeah.
We want to get these things in place.
Yeah.
But it needs to be
Okay.
both sides looked at.
James.
Consequently,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel right that all the senior staff are conducting that, because how is that independent?
Okay.
I think
So,
we're doing it already.
we
you
are,
know,
we
from
are.
Yesterday, aren't we? We're having independent.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Sorry, Frida. So all I'm going to say, James, is the board and the executive have to, in line with our procedures, we have to investigate issues within the sport. What we have to then decide is, are those issues relevant? Do they relate to any malpractice? And then what disciplinary action happens? All the way through that process, we will take independent advice. So we'll always use Sport England in terms of checking we're in line with the code of governance. We will always use independent legal advice to say, is the process that we are following correct? Outside of that, so above and beyond that, we would always, if we make decisions within the sport, so, and it could be about safeguarding, it could be about anything, we want to be in a position, and this was a conversation we had at the board last night, was to, what is the is it the sport resolution? I can't think of the right terminology, but is it which external body does this get passed up to, and for which issues? Because there's a whole variety of different issues we could deal with. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we didn't have to have a disciplinary committee, if we didn't have to have disciplinary procedures? That'd be great, but we do. So, and we have. Okay, I'm gonna finish that, because it's complex and it could go on for a long time. Claire, over to you in terms of process.
Okay, so we come to the vote. I would like to ask a couple of volunteers if they'd be willing to be the tellers, which is no arduous task. So basically there's a few slips of paper will be held up in this room, and I just need you to count them and agree the number with me. Just need a couple of people. Maybe Brian, you might be one. Well volunteered.
I'm not sure that can be on time.
That's all right.
Yeah,
Richard, can I impose on you?
there we go.
Thank you for volunteering, chaps. That's very helpful. Okay, so by the stated closing time for receipt of proxy and appointment forms, that was on 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 20th of July. We had a total of 50 appointment forms that had been received. As you know, they can appoint the chair of the meeting, can appoint an appointed representative from the club to attend, or appoint someone else you know to attend as proxy. We've only got 42 votes in the room in terms of people who are appointed to attend, so today we'll be looking at 42 votes in total. So we had 9 forms submitted by the clubs to appoint an appointed representative. 5 of those are here today. 6 votes were submitted by clubs to appoint someone else as a proxy. 2 of those are here today, and 35 proxy votes were given to the chair. The chair's here, so all 35 of those are here today. In the form, you can give the chair the instruction either how you want them to vote, or let the chair decide on the day. And of the votes that we received, 31 set out their vote and told the chair how they would like them to vote, and 4 instructed the chair to vote at his or her discretion. So as Adam said, today we've only got 1 ordinary resolution, and we need a simple majority in order for that resolution to be passed. So that's 50% or more of the vote. The resolution is around the appointment of auditors, so it reads to reappoint Duncan and Topless as auditor of the company, to hold office from the conclusion of this meeting until the conclusion of the next general meeting of the company, at which management accounts are laid, and authorise the directors to fix their remuneration. Oh, that's a mouthful. Okay, so we're going to go in the following order. So we'll have votes for, votes against, and then any abstentions. So you should all have, everyone that's got a vote in the room should have a little voting card. Richard and Brian, the voting cards, Adam, if I could just borrow one of yours.
Yeah.
Probably this one. So the voting cards have a number at the top, so that's the number of votes. So Adam's holding 26 there. And then you're just checking they've held up the right card. So here it will say for, against, or abstain. So just make sure they've held up the right card. You may get up and circulate the room. Okay, so those who would like to
Don't overplay your part, guys.
those who would like to vote for that resolution, please hold up your card.
Done right. Adam's got enough votes to do on his own.
36 for me.
36. Okay, we'll just check that at the end. Anyone against? 2. Any abstentions? 3. And we've got one vote missing, so let's just go for again.
I missed that one.
So if everyone could hold up their for vote again.
I missed that one.
Yeah. 37.
37? Okay,
Very
thank
good.
you. So that brings us to 37 votes for, 2 against, and 3 abstentions. So that resolution is passed.
Good. That's always the biggest pressure for me. I nearly always get it wrong, so and hold the wrong thing up. So that's pressure over now, which is good. So we have, before I give my closing remarks, we have finished the formalities of the AGM. But I'm really happy to spend 5-10 minutes on just any other questions if anybody's got anything or observations about the AGM, the way we've conducted it, and so on.
I have a question for planning for the future. What is the when we will have a national team, and what is our future volleyball England plan? When we will compete in high level?
That's a great question. That's a really, really great question. A lot of you will be aware that we've recently appointed a new strategic manager for talent in John Foreman. We're just working through his travel details to get him over to the country, but we're hopefully have him in Loughborough soon. We've set some very lofty ambitions over the next 5 years to raise our international presence on a number of different levels, which includes the performance of our England teams that feed into and support the BVF when it comes to then having high-level GB teams that have the potential long-term to qualify under their own steam for the Olympics and Paralympic Games. There are a number of, I guess, initial steps that we're looking at in terms of how we're going to go through the building phase. And I think it's fair to say that we're in a position where, as much as we realise that we have a performance pathway at the moment that includes juniors and seniors, a lot of our effort has to be focused on how we build from the ground up, how we support through clubs, regions, counties, the local structures, so that we have a supporting system that's strong enough then to be able to kind of pluck players and coaches and talented people, not just the athletes, into the right environments to test them at the right stages, so that we can then go and start to I guess make our way through the NEPSA, the CEV, and then obviously on the FIVB level. And this is across all 3 formats of the sport. So what we don't want to do here is accelerate plans in one area. We want to make sure we take all 3 formats of the sport with us, but acknowledging the fact that maybe the opportunities in beach and sitting in particular at the moment are maybe a little bit, well, let's be completely honest, are a little bit further ahead than indoor. But we absolutely have the ambitions over the next 5 years to at least put the solid roots in place so that as we start to go through the Olympic cycles in years to come, and let's not, kid ourselves here, we're maybe thinking about the 2032, 36 Olympic cycles to really see the fruit of what we're trying to establish. It's a great question, though.
Well, my focus is more for our future, because I see that a lot of potential, and I see that we don't use this potential at all. And at the AST volleyball, we've been working on in the 1 year, but within 1 year, we already had that progress, and we see that a lot of the men, what they need, what the kids need, they need a proper training, and with the proper training and followed up by national coaches in every region, and also national associations, local associations, and those are the choosing keys should be for future. Since 1 year, for us, we don't get anyone to listen to us, for example.
Yeah. So Bullen, you're based in London, aren't you?
Yes, in Barnet.
Yeah, so Bullen did his level assistant coaches course with me last year.
Yes, I know.
And we played you in national competitions, the juniors as well.
Yes.
And the frustration, I'm there with you, because we don't have any funding. Volleyball isn't funded as a performance sport. And I know the rest of the world is going, why? That's because in England it's not a performance sport. So the funding, and that's the big one. I just have to answer that, I think. Our biggest problem is we don't have the millions to have national. Sorry?
How can we solve this problem?
Yes.
I'm going to ask Richard to come in, because I think, Richard, you'd be best placed probably to answer this. So.
I'll try. I think it's a great question. I mean, what we're trying to do is, in order to get any funding into performance sport, we've run a campaign since London 2012 to try and get that funding. At the end of the day, you needed to come up with a minimum of a 10-year strategy as to how you might achieve something. And if you didn't come up with that 10-year strategy, the likelihood of us attracting funding from UK sport was going to be extremely limited. So the board of the BBF made the difficult decision that the two areas of the three disciplines that we had the greatest opportunity and potential to succeed in were beach volleyball, tick. We've now got 2 pairs, boys, and a 3rd pair, girls, who are being funded directly because we got some funding for them, and they have proved to be very successful. We needed to try to demonstrate that they could qualify for Paris. There's still an outside chance that perhaps 1 pair might qualify for Paris. But really, the target is 28, Los Angeles. The second discipline we had to decide was, could we catch up at sitting volleyball? And certainly in sitting volleyball, the biggest challenge for sitting volleyball is the number of players. The players that we currently have available and are playing for the Great Britain team are doing remarkably well. But we also, because of the nature of the sport and the need to show inclusion within our governing bodies, we were able to get a considerable sum of funding to help the sitting volleyball men and women's teams progress, and we've done that. The third area is volleyball. And we needed to demonstrate that we could show sufficient improvement from the time that we submitted the application, that within a 10-year strategy, we could qualify for the Olympic or the Paralympic Games. Sadly, from our perspective, we have to be in the toughest zone in the world in order to achieve qualification, because Europe has, if they're not necessarily the Olympic champions or the Paralympic champions, they actually have a higher percentage of countries who are extremely well funded, and therefore when you're trying to take on Russia, if they were still in the game, we were trying to take on Poland, where they can attract 80,000 for a world championship. You can take on Italy, Germany, France, etc. To try and get one of 4 places, it was determined and it was agreed by UK Sport and the BOA, we would not qualify a British team, not just an English team, a British team, by 28 or 32. So when Charlie says, quite rightly, that we're looking at 32 to 36 as when we might be able to, that gives us 10 years to develop that strategy at all levels and in all home countries to try and bridge the gap between where we are and where we're going. So whether that means bearing in mind that during the build-up to London 2012, we had something in excess of 20, 25 players playing for professional clubs in Europe. And when all the funding streams, UK Sport in its wisdom, determined that we weren't worthy of being invested in as a sport, all those, well, not all, a lot of those, if not most of those contracts ceased to exist. And the challenge, I think, for all of us is how do we demonstrate to young people, particularly those talented youngsters that are out there, that we wish to invest in their future, because if they feel that there's nothing to aim for, why would they stay in the sport? And I think we feel the challenge of that, all of us. And I'm hoping that if we can get a little bit of success with our 2 funded programs, and certainly the fellows in the Commonwealth Games raise the profile of the sport, of volleyball, and if our sitting programs continue to develop and a strategy is established with more players coming in, and we know that there are an awful lot of people with disabilities that want to come into a Paralympic discipline sport. If we can demonstrate that that's succeeding, then I think that UK Sport, we've got the goodwill of the British Olympic Association and the British Paralympic Association. We've just got to convince UK Sport that they're not just pouring money down the drain by investing in a 3rd discipline, volleyball, which is going to not qualify. And we cannot risk taking money and not qualifying. So we need that 10-year strategy to show that we can get there. And I think if we can do that, and we can pick up the 14, 15, 16-year-olds, I'm now president of a club, Stourbridge Volleyball Club, where the concentration of the Black Country National League team and the 4 or 5 clubs that are around us are concentrating on young people. 15, 16, bearing in mind, you probably are not going to achieve the maximum of your potential until you're what, 29, 30? Is that the general consensus? Best volleyballers in the world, 29, 30? Yeah? I mean, as you yourself showed, Brian. Yeah.
I was finished at 21.
He's only 31 now.
So if we can get that potential established, your point is entirely right. We need to show that the 14, 15-year-olds and the young kids at primary school that are coming through, that there is something to aim for, and that's one of the biggest challenges I think we've got.
I think just to add to it really, really briefly, and I agree with everything that Richie's just said, but this is where our work, if you look at the implementation plan, there's 12 success statements that we've depicted. 2 of them are specifically around talent. The other 10 have to be achieved to achieve those 2. So, you know, the big thrust of work that we're about to, you know, embark on in terms of our year 1, let's make the Super League truly super. How can we elevate that league? How can we put it out front so it becomes an inspiration and an aspirational league that our young and not so young players, coaches, officials want to be a part of? That's a big part of it. You know, building the domestic structures, you know, continuing to develop those top end competitions domestically, is all going to contribute towards then when we do step out onto the international scene that we are ready to compete. You know, we're battle hardened, and there's plans emerging, like I said, through John Foreman, Kirk Pittman, our beach development performance director. You know, that are hopefully going to start to put the building blocks in place so that we can have sustained year-on-year success. Because what I don't want, and I don't think anybody wants, is have a yo-yo effect where you get a really good cohort and then the next year it drops off because what's coming through behind isn't maybe as strong. And a number of the sports that I've worked in, and I won't mention them, have had that problem. So I think the way we are going about this in terms of building from the ground up is absolutely the right way to go. It's just the longer journey to take.
Well, this is longer journey, just the progress. And the background of my one when I came from, it was different. And the strategy of the country was different. When they start, they had just one start phase, and like 4 or 5 teams, they were playing in the same place. This is the whole thing is called volleyball court. Just proper volleyball court, just for volleyball, for example. And like at the moment, one of the best team as a national European team is Serbia, for example. But the league in Serbia not in the high level.
Yeah.
Like at the moment, the best 2 leagues in women, I would say Italy and Turkey. And but in the men is different. So for here, we have everyone. We have Italian, we have Turkish, we have Polish, we have all nations. We have a potential here, get all the mixture.
Yeah.
And they don't have to play here. They can play in USA, they can play in Turkey, they can play in Italy, they can play anywhere. But to build from national team and then create the future, and they become a role model for the youngsters.
Yeah.
And this is my experience. So we've done it for long years. And if we start from secondary school, it will lead us to in 5 years, in 3 to 5 years, we'll definitely get the results straight away.
Because we were talking about this earlier, about the fact that you see volleyball isn't taught in many junior or secondary schools. It's not a mainstream school for PE teachers.
Yeah.
So again, that's something we've talked about, that perhaps we need to start getting back into those PE colleges and getting the PE teachers to take volleyball on board, because we know when they do, it's a fantastic sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I suggest this is we'll take this point and then I'm going to wrap it, only because this is a fantastic conversation to have over sandwiches. So
I want to take this to the opposite extreme.
Yep.
What are we doing for grassroots? And what are we doing for clubs? Because all I can say is, since stepping down as regional subgroup chair and being involved with at least 2 clubs on a day-to-day basis, the number of times I've been contacted by the hub, I can count on one hand, despite being well known. If that's my experience, what's the experience of other clubs? Because what I hear from a lot of players is they don't feel engaged with us as an organisation, and I want to see that. We talked earlier about partnering.
Absolutely.
At the minute, we don't seem to be hitting bottom end, and we've got to build to get back to that top level. We've got to build a broader base.
Yep.
So, what are the plans specifically? I see the smiles, which is great. It's obviously positive thinking. Just give us a flavour of where we're going with it, please.
As much as I get really excited about the talent end as well, and I can't lie, I get more excited about the community end and the grassroots end. Jess, do you, from a Keep Grow perspective, do you want to just touch on a few points in terms of some of the work of the subgroup, because that might be relevant?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that we're looking at the moment is revisiting Volley 2s. So I don't know whether you've seen the document, but it's a long, lengthy piece of work that if you're a new coach coming in or you're a teacher in a school, it's hard for you to understand what you can take from it, what you're meant to do with it. So looking at revisiting that, chunking it down into pieces that are easier to digest for teachers, for new coaches, for existing coaches, to then develop that through the pathways of the young people coming in and take them right through to a level where they can start running some more senior teams.
Can I just pick up on that? In the to use a phrase, probably unfortunately, dumbing down on the official side, there's now a proposal for an even lower level, which which personally I disagree with, but that's by the by. We need something similar on the coaching side, because if I look at one of the clubs I'm involved in, which is growing like Topsy, I'm pleased to say, we desperately got people who are keen to volunteer, but they are being blocked from getting any kind of qualification because they've got to go through a very lengthy and slow process, assistant coach and this, that and the other. So that is vital to achieve that.
Yeah.
I can add to that, because within Volleyball for Life, as part of the new affiliations that were referred to in the document we talked about earlier, we are looking at different categories of volunteer. How can we train and skill people for various roles within a club, like a volunteer or an organiser? What support can we provide them with? And what recognition can we provide to them for doing that work? So we are looking at the grassroots. We're building. It's just, these are just things that are beginning to form. So you will see positive things.
Brian, it's a really frustrating, it's the right question. So it's a really difficult question to answer, because resources dictate what you can and can't do. I think there is endless good ideas as to how we could add value and help and support and do more things. There's just not the resources to be. So you end up with this frustrating thing of thinking, we know what we're trying to solve, we know how we're trying to help, but you just haven't either got the capacity in the team, you haven't got the resources in terms of projects. And that's systematically why we need to be building things up. We need to, over the next X years, however long that takes, way beyond, perhaps our tenure, we just got to keep incrementally each year getting better and improving. But you're dead right. The club's at the heart of the sport. If you've got rubbish clubs, you're going to have a rubbish sport. If you've got great clubs, you're going to have a great sport. So we've got to try and help. Let's just go and get more money, and then we can do more. Good. Okay. I'm going to wrap things up if we've got.
I've got two more questions, please. I've got a lot more questions, but two that I think are important.
You fire. Fire away, James.
So NBC update. Have we signed the new contract with the NBC? If we have we got our dates confirmed? And then finally, if we got our dates confirmed, was there a cost impact? And how has that cost impact been mitigated?
The assessment of the new contract that's on the table is still ongoing. We wouldn't be appropriate to give an update on that now, but it's progressing.
So dates, etc., are still outstanding. So we've got confirmation of any of the dates. So
no, I can answer that. No. I can answer that. The dates that we require for the 23-24 season are still available. As part of the conversations, it's just the brass tacks of the contract, pretty much.
Okay, and then the second question, which I think is important for the membership, is you recently carried out an independent review of governance. Can you tell us when you're planning to publish that report? What actions have been agreed, and what recommendations have you chosen not to accept?
Okay. We considered it for the first, so we had a presentation at a board meeting last night, really positive. There was many good recommendations within it. I don't think overly much we disagreed with any of the recommendations. So I want to just check with the reason I'm going to be a bit hazy on this next picture. I just want to check with the author of the report what he wants publishing. So I see no reason why we shouldn't publicise what we looked at last night. I don't see a problem with not doing that. It's got some really good suggestions in it and things that I think we knew, but we need to put them into place. Good. Okay, good. Everybody in the room, thank you hugely for being here. I really do appreciate it. Thank you to I think 21 was our number, who sat diligently with the cricket on in one screen, the football on in the other, and the AGM. I bet we were the main attraction though. That was the key thing. I just, by way of closing today's AGM, and I've said this every year, have felt incredibly privileged to be able to chair the sport. I've really enjoyed it. I've made great friends. I've learned lots. I have witnessed some amazing outcomes, and yeah, it's been really enjoyable. And probably 7 years ago, I was an interested sort of spectator of volleyball without having a real love for the sport. I've absolutely fallen in love with the sport and what's going on. I haven't got that long left, but in the time that I have, please rest assured, I will do all I can to make sure we continue to improve. It's absolutely not about I, it's about the we collectively. The board have been amazing. Thank you, board, for all your work. The hub have been amazing. Thank you. And the sport have been great. So let's work as a team. Let's succeed together rather than fail apart.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a soundbite for you. Finally. Good. And with that, we close the AGM. Thank you.
Thank you.